Yes, Chepkonga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to join my colleagues. You know, Honorable Speaker, I want to remind them. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 12. The Bible says, remind them even though they know. Mr. Speaker, I want to remind the Council of Governors, even though they know that Article 95 of the Constitution is very clear and it does not exist anywhere in any other article, Mr. Speaker. And it reads, for the avoidance of doubt, that the National Assembly represents the people of the constituents and special interests of the National Assembly. It says in 2, Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly deliberates on and resolves issues that are of concern to the people. Mr. Speaker, there is no other person in Kenya that has the power to resolve issues that are of concern to the people. It is only this House, Mr. Speaker. Even the courts themselves, I am being reminded by a layman here that the courts are also don't have power to resolve issues that are of concern to the people. Mr. Speaker, you know the other day we increased the RMLF from 18 shillings to 25. And now because we increased that money, they are now salivating. The reason we were doing so, Mr. Speaker, was to resolve issues that are of concern to the people. Mr. Speaker, you know, in the last government, they launched about 10,000 kilometers of roads. And you know, Mr. Speaker, there was no money to pay for those roads. And it is necessary that the RMLF was increased for purposes of paying off the outstanding bills with regard to those roads that have been constructed in those counties, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, for someone to come and say that they are holding 10 billion shillings because they are salivating for the 7 or 8 shillings that was increased is completely unfair and unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker. You know, people just read Article 95 and they just go to sleep. Article 95 says members of Parliament have 4 roles: oversight, budgeting, representation, and legislation. Mr. Speaker, we budget. There is no one else under the sun in Kenya who has the role of budgeting of the resources of this country, which Kenyans pay as taxes, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the Senate or any other body cannot originate a money bill. It can only be originated from this House. That is the reason why Kara could not be passed until this House agrees. Mr. Speaker, we are not begging the Council of Governors. We want to ask them to withdraw that bill so that they can be able to get their money, which is more than the 10 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker. As members have just said, I also come from a constituency. I have never seen any Council of Governors repairing roads in Ainabkoi or maintaining them, Mr. Speaker. In fact, most of the time we are asked, please assist us, we know this is not your road. And we go and plead with the Director General of Kera, please, could you assist these people of Ainabkoi who have a problem with this road? And you know, Mr. Speaker, it is not a Kera road, it is a county road, Mr. Speaker. And we can give so many of them, there are plethora of roads that have been repaired by Kera that has nothing to do with what has been apportioned to them. And so, Mr. Speaker, we must stand very firm. In fact, we have now learned something, Mr. Speaker, that we can use the Sakaja route to stop some people from doing some funny things. No, I'm not saying it's a Sakaja route. No. The Sakaja route, Mr. Speaker, is very unfair.
That is criminal conduct.
It is a very criminal conduct. But we are saying... Well,
that is criminal conduct.
But we are saying, Mr. Speaker, we have just learned bad habits recently.
There is no justification for that.
I agree with you, Mr. Speaker. Yes. There's no justification at all. Yes. For people to pour cabbage on people's gates. Yes. You know, NEMA must in fact take action. That's what the majority leader is saying. Mr. Speaker, we are saying...
Are you saying, Chepkonga, if KPLC demands power payment from you, you go and cut down their polls?
No, Mr. Speaker, that's what I'm saying. It is absolutely criminal. It's a criminal enterprise. They are involved in some criminality, Mr. Speaker. Yes. And it is that we don't have any...
No country will condone that kind of criminal behavior.
Yeah, but we would like to ask the Senate to call to order Senator Sakaja for dumping waste on KPLC, Mr. Speaker. That is conduct unbecoming. Yeah, and the reason why people see us this way, Mr. Speaker, is because we are gentlemen and gentlewomen, and we like to follow the law. But we should not be taken like we have no teeth, Mr. Speaker. We can fight.
There are no gentlewomen, there are ladies.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Speaker. They are gentle ladies. No, it's just that one of them was being told she was not properly dressed yesterday.
Okay, finish up.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
Honourable members, I'll close with Otiende Omollo, then Kainan, then GK. Only those, then we go to the next.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Exercise some brevity.
Mr. Speaker, first is information to the members. As the members are aware, we are in court on the NGCDF matter.
Yes.
And it's currently before the Court of Appeal. And just next week, on 6th of March, we are appearing for directions. As we had indicated to the members, the court, we are fast-tracking the hearing. But that notwithstanding, it does not give anyone any authority to reduce anything. But the beauty with it, ultimately, members, is that we are the ones with the power. The executive can only make proposals. So it is within us to change what we need to change. And I agree with the ruling with the Speaker earlier that we must proceed as a matter of necessity. Secondly, on the RMLF matter, it is very interesting, Mr. Speaker, that the very people who are with us in court, who challenge the NGCDF matter every day, who litigate up to the Supreme Court and come back and restart again, have never found it necessary to challenge any of the exercise of authority by the counties, including the bursaries. Strictly speaking, the county governors are supposed to deal with ECD and TVCs. Now, TVCs, you end up with students coming to the members of parliament to support them, even the institutions themselves. One would have thought that the governors would actually concentrate on the areas of their jurisdiction before they spill over. But many of us have usually not complained because in most of our constituencies, students are needy. So that even with all that, you still find other students who don't get it. But when then the same governors want to encroach into our area, then it calls for us to demonstrate that our power is not just latent, it is potent. And in that respect, Mr. Speaker, I think that as we go along, and we don't have to wait for your direction on this, we as members will be taking on these governors on many of these things, in court and outside court, in matters we filed and those ones filed by others, so that we can get what we call an equilibrium of power. So that people understand that actually this is where the power lies. It does not lie in courts, it does not lie in the executive, it lies here. Courts can interpret the law anytime, and they can interpret our actions anytime. But ultimately, they cannot stop us from making legislation however we want. Courts cannot stop us from exercising our powers in terms of the budget however we want. Let's send a caution to the governors that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Thank you.
They won't understand that English.
Thank you, Honourable Otiende Omollo, for order. Thank you, Otiende Omollo, for finally agreeing with the Speaker that power lies here and not elsewhere. Kainan?
Mr. Speaker, allow me to join this debate. Mr. Speaker, this debate has two aspects, and I'm glad that today the leader of majority and the leader of minority have agreed on one thing, that this house has been reduced to a house of lamentations, Mr. Speaker. This August House, Mr. Speaker, once upon a time was an appendage of the executive. We freed ourselves, and you know it, how it used to be. But suddenly again, we are going back to the same, Mr. Speaker. I'm told the chairman of transport is here, Mr. Speaker. When an MD of a national government agency, without any due regard, without any consultation, just by a circular, negates everything that this house has passed, Mr. Speaker, then what is the implication? The implication is we are no longer the August House that we used to be. When the MD of Kera sits down, and yet we have an oversight committee called the Transport Committee. When the MD for Kura sits down, and yet we have a committee here, and negates what we have passed, Mr. Speaker, that has gone through all the stages. the only inference that you can make is this is no longer the August House. I agree with what the leader of majority has said. With the leader of majority and the leader of minority. Look, under the current constitution, and for those of us who have been part of this, we had certain considerations. Mr. Speaker, you know how we included devolution in the current constitution. You know how we captured equalization in the current constitution. CDF, all those now are floating in the air. The governors have gone to court to make sure equalization doesn't work. It's no longer functioning. The governors have gone to court to make sure NCDF is not working. The governors have gone to court to make sure RLNF is not working. The next thing they are saying is members of parliament have no role in the governance of the Republic of Kenya. Is that where you want to be? Is that where you want to be? That is where we are. To the extent that some of them are going public to say members of parliament have no role in the county affairs. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge this. I want to urge colleagues. There comes a time when people must be ready to make hard decisions. We need to do both summative and formative evaluation of all the resources we have devolved since the promulgation of the current constitution, so that we allow Kenyans to see the value of the billions and the trillions we have devolved, Mr. Speaker, as the true representative of the people, Mr. Speaker. Otherwise, we'll sit here, lament, go to court. I'm glad what the Honorable Otiende Omollo has said. But that's the court. What are we doing in the House here? The budget-making process is in our hands, Mr. Speaker. We are not using. The oversight process is in our hands. We are not using. The legislative power is in our hands. We are not using, Mr. Speaker. Then what are we saying? Mr. Speaker, this group, Mr. Speaker, comprising of the Council of Governors, slowly they have taken over. One time, they blackmailed the members of parliament. The other time, they blackmailed the senators. They blackmailed the executive. Everybody's been blackmailed. Under our watch, what are we going to do? This is what I want to suggest. We need to critically dissect the current constitution and address all the areas, the gray areas, Mr. Speaker, that ought to have added value to the well-being of the people we represent. If we do both summative and formative evaluation, Mr. Speaker, you'll realize the billions that have gone. I had the privilege of representing 2 constituencies, Mr. Speaker, and I am ready to take all of you for a benchmarking visit to Wajir West and Eldas and see what the national government has done over the last 10 years and what the county government has done over the last 10 years, and you'll be in a position to compare and appreciate that our constituencies still survive on budgetary supports from the national government.
Thank you.
Yet, billions are devolved. My conclusion is this. Chairman Transport, if you are here, we cannot be under the threat of a Mayor MD of Kera. He has issued circulars, many circulars. In fact, Mr. Speaker, some of these MDs, because we have failed to bite, we have failed to act. I want to, yesterday in the House Business Committee, and I want my colleagues, the leader of majority and the leader of minority, to hear this. This is the first time, and I want all the members to hear this, in the history of NCDF, from July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, our proposals are yet to be approved. What are these other funds you are looking for? Where are your CDF proposals? You are being duped to ask to facilitate the bursary allocations. Where is the money?
Thank you.
Even the basic is not there. So chairman, former chairman of NCDF, I've been running after the CEO and the management of NCDF board. Where are the approvals? Where are the approvals for the fund managers to actualize? The approvals have not been done. What are we saying? Whose mistake is it? It's our mistake. That approval ought to have been in place by December so that we roll out the project. Yes. So we're all sitting. Let's stop complaining. Let's not reduce ourselves to a house of lamentation.
GK.
Can we act and bite constitutionally? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.